My name is Holly Michelson, and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Del Mar, New York, just outside of Albany. Today I have this really adorable Valentine card that features the welcoming window and the sweet ice cream bundles. And I've combined the two together to make this fun card where I've cut out a window that we can peek through to see our ice cream cone. So it's as if we are looking at the exterior of the ice cream shop and looking through the front window at this ice cream cone. And so I'm gonna show you how to make this adorable card and really focus on some non-traditional Valentine sets to show you how you can take some sets that you might already have and turn them into an adorable Valentine. Before I get started, I'd love to invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Handmade with Holly. I'd love to have you be a regular viewer with me. And if you click on the notifications bell, YouTube will notify you each time I upload a new video. That way you won't miss any of my awesome projects. Today we're going to be using the Welcoming Window Bundle, including the coordinating dies. There's a nice set of dies that go with this set. We'll also be using the Sweet Ice Cream stamp set that coordinates with the Ice Cream Builder Punch. I've used the brick and mortar 3D embossing folder to create the exterior texture of the outside of the ice cream shop. And I've used the scallop contour dies in order to make the scalloped edge on the awning of our ice cream shop. Now, I did use a variety of colors on this sample. The sample that we'll make together, I'm going to use a different piece of designer series paper, so I'll be using different ink choices. Don't worry about all the details. I'll have a downloadable with all of the measurements for the pieces that I've used today, as well as a complete list of ink colors for both versions of the card. On this particular card, the DSP came from Pattern Party, which is a pack of designer series paper that I have featured many times on this channel. And the color in this paper is Flirty Flamingo. So I carried the Flirty Flamingo into the ice cream cone scoop, also into the flowers in my potted plants. The greenery utilizes soft succulent, and I used Cajun Craze for my planted pots. Cinnamon Cider for our waffle cone, Tuxedo Memento Black for the Stamp Sentiment, and I swiped some Smoky Slate onto the brick to really accentuate the texture of the embossing folder. So on the card that we're going to make today, I'm going to use this piece of designer series paper. This comes from the Sweet Talk designer series paper, which is a brand new pack of paper that was released in January of 2022. Has some adorable patterns in it that are perfect for Valentines. Really a lot of fun here. Look at these lollipops, they're adorable. This pack is so much fun. I love the Candy Conversation hearts. And these also coordinate with the dies from the Sweet, where you can actually cut out all of these conversation hearts with the dies. Today, I opted to use this sheet of paper with all the red hearts, and if you turn it over, I have this lovely stripe pattern, and that's what I'm going to be using to make the awning for today's version of the card. Because I'm using this sheet of paper, instead of soft succulent, I will be using the Granny Apple Green that's included in the paper. And instead of Flirty Flamingo, I will be using the Blushing Bride from this paper. To get started, we need 11 by 4 1/4 inch piece of cardstock. So this is half of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper cut vertically down the center. And I've also scored this here at 5.5 to make a standard top fold card. This is a very common fold that I'm sure you've made a zillion times, and just giving that a good burnish with the bone folder. So this is my card base that allows the card to open at the top. However, I'm also going to bring in an additional piece of basic white cardstock. These are both the thick version of the cardstock. Since this is a card base, I want it to be nice and sturdy. And this measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So this is a quarter sheet of cardstock. And you'll notice that's the same size as the card front. And the reason why I have this is because I want to use it as a tool to hide how I'm going to attach my window sheet inside the card, that clear window sheet, and also to provide a little bit more strength to the card front. Once I run this card base through the embossing folder, the paper isn't quite as strong as it was before. So by adding a quarter sheet of cardstock on the inside, not only can I reinforce the strength of the card front, but I'll also be able to hide where I'm attaching that window sheet so that nobody can see that. We're going to need to cut out our window, and I'm going to cut out the window using the die from the Welcoming Window bundle. This die is intended to coordinate with this window stamp. I'm not using that today because it would obstruct the view of the ice cream cone, but I am going to use the die. Now, what I'm going to do is open the card back up. We want to make sure that our cut does not end up on the back of our card. So I'm just going to kind of look for the center of my card. And then I recommend that you bring in a ruler. You don't have to be 100% precise, but you do really want to try to get your window somewhat close to center, left and right, and also kind of centered top to bottom. Now, keep in mind, we're going to be attaching this piece of paper as the window awning. So we want to make sure that the top of our window lands up underneath that awning. We don't want to be able to see the top edge of the window, as you can see here. But by the same token, we also have to factor in that we're going to be cutting a scallop. So we will be losing a slight bit of the bottom of this piece of paper. So after you cut out the scallop, you'll have a scrap like this, but you'll notice that is going to take a little bit of the height off of this piece of paper. From doing a few practice versions, what I've assessed is you kind of want to get your window about 1.5, somewhere around there, from where you scored the card base. And I'm also going to put it about a ruler width from each side. That kind of gives me an eyeball. Because it's important that we get our window kind of in the center and tucked underneath our awning, I am going to use some Post-it notes to secure my window die down once I think I have placement that I'm happy with. And I'm going to secure that at both the top and the bottom. I'm going to just pop off camera for a second and run this through the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. But before I do, I'm going to make sure that I take my inside panel, put it exactly behind my card front so that I cut through the card base and this extra supportive layer for the inside, both at the exact same time. So now that I've run that through the die cutting machine, that actually cut out both pieces in one pass. So you can see it cut through the top and the bottom layers. I'm going to go ahead and peel this die off. And I'm going to set these aside, but don't get rid of them. We'll actually use them to stamp our flowers. Now, if you look at this, we have just enough room to fit our ice cream cone, but it's a little bit tight in that space. And remember, we're going to have the awning that's going to cover up a little bit of the top of the window. I recommend that we actually extend the window space area, and we've got plenty of room down here. So what I'm going to do, make sure my paper is lined up again, the top layer and the bottom layer. And then I'm just going to add my window die, maybe about 1/4 of an inch down. No need to be exact, just kind of generally about maybe 1/4 of an inch down. And I'm going to nest that die there as best I can and go ahead and attach that with my Post-it notes again. Now I'm going to go back through and run this through the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine and cut off just a little bit more window area. Okay, so because I cut them at the same time, they should line up pretty well. And I've got these little pieces that I can set aside or recycle. And then you can just, sometimes you get like a little bit of a lip there. If that happened to you, you can just take your snips and give that a little bit of a trim. So I'm going to flip that over and just come in from the back and just take that little bit off. There we go. And now we have a window that's slightly longer than what the die was intended for. So now you see we have this texture here that creates that facade of the outside of the ice cream shop. And so what we're going to do is this time we're going to run the card back through the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, but we're not going to include this piece. This piece is our brace and support for the inside, and it's also hiding where we're mounting the window sheet. So we're just going to take the card layer and we're going to put it into the brick and mortar 3D embossing folder. Now it's really important, and I should have mentioned this before, when you cut your piece of DSP, assuming that you're using something striped like I did, the idea of mimicking an awning, you want to make sure that you cut your paper in the right orientation, that your stripes are facing this way. You wouldn't want the stripes to be horizontal on your awning. So similarly, when you are embossing the card base, you want to make sure that the bricks are going in the right direction. So have the Stampin' Up! Logo facing upward, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to put the card base into the embossing folder, and we're going to line the right edge up with that line. That's going to help us get the paper in there straight. And it's also going to ensure that our bricks are horizontal instead of vertical on the facade of the building. Now, I like to run all my embossing folders through the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine this way, with the hinge first. And so if I do that, this piece of card will be in my way. The machine isn't wide enough to go through like that. So I'm just going to simply fold that underneath my embossing folder. And now I'm going to go run this through the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, just like this. So that gives me this. What I want to do is add a little bit of smoky slate onto this card base to really bring out some of that texture of the 3D brick. So what we want to do is swipe some smoky slate over these bricks to really try to create that whitewash effect that we often see on brick buildings. We're trying to create that facade of the outside of the ice cream shop. So the awning looking into the window and this subtle detail on the brick really gives us that effect like we're outside. Now you can do that in one of two ways. Bring in a Stampin' Spot from a paper pumpkin. This is smoky slate. And that might give you some more control. Or you can take your full-size ink pad and kind of gently and carefully swish this across. I've tried it both ways. I actually liked the look of the full-size pad a little bit better than I did with the spot. You might even want to open it so that you don't get any on your inside. And I'm just going to give that a light touch, creating that whitewash look. don't worry too much about the top. That'll be covered by the awning. And just try to make sure you have some distributed around. I think that looks good. Maybe just a smidge right here. I have a piece of window sheet. This is a piece of clear plastic in the annual catalog. And this measures 2.5 by 3.5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into the inside of my card, and I'm just going to put some tear-in tape around this window edge as a way for me to attach the window sheet. We're going to be able to hide this because we have that extra panel that we made for the inside. So now that I have my tear-in tape down, I'm just going to take my Take Your Pick tool and use that to gently remove the protective backing on that adhesive. Play with that for a second to separate it without pulling up the actual adhesive itself. There we go. And now I'm going to place the window sheet right over that tear-in tape, so making sure I've got some excess on all 4 sides. I don't have to be precise because I've got this great little piece that's going to allow me to hide my work. All right, so we're going to go ahead and line up that protective backing on the inside with the front window. If you flipped it or rotated it while in the interim, just play with it and see what way you need to have it to get it to line back up. And I'm going to go ahead then and I'm going to put Stampin' Seal on the inside to attach that down. And then maybe go ahead and open the card and line this up. Go ahead and give that a good press. Now we've concealed the way we've attached the window sheet, and we've really made this card more sturdy after having run it through the embossing folder. Now, we also want to make our awning, and we want to have this great detailed scalloped edge. So I'm going to go back over to the cut and emboss machine with this die, and I'm going to cut off the bottom edge. I'm going to line this up as close to the bottom as possible. We're going to lose a little bit of the paper, but we don't want to lose too much because we want to make sure that it comes over our window. And I'm going to kind of look left to right as well. You wouldn't want to do it like this where the edge hits right here, but then you end mid-scallop on this side. We kind of want to center that so that it ends at about the same place in the pattern on both sides. I'm going to bring my Post-it notes back in to hold that down. And then I'm going to bring this over to the cut and emboss machine. All right. And this is what I got. So the way I'm going to attach this is I'm going to use the Stampin' Seal at the top so that it comes right flat at the top. And then I'm going to use dimensionals at the bottom, so where it comes to the window, it's propped up a little bit and it's kind of three-dimensional. Now, before I do that, I just want to remind you to think about the center. Right here in these two scallops, if you look on the inside of the card, these two scallops hang over that window edge. So we don't want to put any dimensionals here or here, because they're going to show on the back side. So first I'm going to bring in my Stampin' Seal up at the top, dimensionals on. I'm going to focus on these two scallops that don't peek through the window. And then for these two, I'm going to go a little bit higher so that I can't see them through the window. Let's go ahead and check our placement. So they still have the protective backing on them. And if I were to look through, I don't see the dimensionals. So that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and remove the paper to expose the adhesive. And then just line that up with the top edge of my card, right, left, and press that into place. So now my awning is flat at the top, but it has this pop of dimension down here at the window. So now we need to make our embellishments for the card. We need to make our 2 potted plants for the outside of the storefront and also our ice cream cone. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp these pieces here. And I'm using Cajun Craze, which is a little bit darker than what I would like. So I'm going to do 2nd generation stamping. I'm going to stamp off once on some scratch paper before I actually stamp onto my project. And I'm just using this scratch paper because I like to keep my grid paper clean for the video. Now you'll notice the paper that I'm using here for the pots and that I'm going to use for the flowers is actually the window cutout. So I'm just reusing that piece. I don't like to waste anything. And so I'm using that window cutout to get my embellishments for the card. Now I'm going to go ahead and use Granny Apple Green. And I'm going to do the greenery. You want to get that very close to the top edge so that you have room for both of these. And then I'm going to come in with the coordinating flower stamp, Blushing Bride ink. Now, if we're looking at Welcoming Window, I used this set of greenery right here. This stamp coordinates with this set of greenery. This stamp coordinates with this set of greenery. So make sure you've chosen the right flower. I'm going to use this flower here. And another way to check is to see how many holes you have in your stamp with how many flowers. They've deliberately done a different number of flowers to help you use the right one. And I'm just going to line that up with the white spots and stamp. And these stamps are created to work together and make it easier for you to get that two-tone effect. Great, those look terrific. In this case, I chose to stamp these in Blushing Bride. This color is in my designer series paper, so it coordinates. But I also wanted to use the most pink possible because I am going to be using this as a Valentine. If you could make a very similar card, and instead of saying "You Melt My Heart," you could use the "Thank you, my sweet friend," "You're so cool." You could use any of those other sentiments and make this card for another occasion. But since today is January 11th, I'm deliberately making Valentines. Now we also need our ice cream cone and our scoop of ice cream. Just to save us a little bit of time, I went ahead and stamped those in advance. And so I'm going to bring in my ice cream builder punch and go ahead and punch these out. When I'm making something like the ice cream cone, it's very likely I'm going to make more than one Valentine, or that I'm going to want to have more of these for other projects. So while I already had a narrow strip of cardstock, I just went ahead and stamped 4 cones, and it's really quick and efficient for me to go ahead and line that up and punch out my cone, and then tear that off, even take a little bit more of that off, and then just move on to my next one. And boom, now I quickly already have 2 ice cream cones. Now, one thing I would recommend is that when you're going to be stamping items that you're going to punch, think a little bit about the orientation of the punch before you stamp. So knowing that the ice cream cone was on the left side, it was really easy for me to make a vertical strip. And like I said, I can just tear that off and then quickly go in and punch the next one. If I had stamped this in another direction or horizontally, it might be much harder for me to manipulate the strip and the punch. So when you're stamping this type of thing, do think a little bit about the orientation of the punch and do yourself a favor and take some of the work out of it by stamping your image in a direction that makes your life easier. Now, in the case of these ice cream cones, I again used a strip here, and I can just go ahead and bring my ice cream cone in from the right and line this up. Right now I have a piece that's big enough for me to hold on to. I can line that up however I like and then give it a punch. And now that I have this piece left, that's going to be a little bit harder to manipulate. I'm going to go ahead and take the bottom section off and get rid of that. And if I have a small piece like this and I need a little bit of help to get that into my punch, I can go ahead and do something like this where I can add a Post-it note that gives me some extra material to hold on to. Line that up with my punch and then give it a punch to get the other one out of there. Okay, there's a few tips on using your punches. Now these I need to run through the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. I will be using the coordinating dies. There's a die here for the flower pot and also a die here for the flowers. Just to save us a little bit of time, I went ahead and did that in advance. And so I have all my little bits. I'm gonna go ahead and bring in my ice cream cone. And I wanna make sure that I'm placing that in the center, left and right, but also kind of as far down to the bottom as I can so that I have space for where my ice cream cone scoop is gonna go. We also want to bring the sentiment in and stamp that onto our ice cream scoop. So I'm going to get that good and inky and put some Stampin' Seal on the back of my cone and then kind of position it, but don't press it down until you can eyeball it and make sure your cone is in the right spot. You want it centered left to right within the window, and you want the tip of the cone as close to the bottom of the window as you can. When you're happy with that, go ahead and press it down. And then I'm gonna attach the ice cream scoop with some dimensionals. On the edge, nothing goes to waste. Go ahead and put those down. Take off the paper. And now again, I'm gonna just sort of gently place this without firmly pressing it. Look about the placement, that looks excellent. And now I'm gonna go ahead and give that a little press. We also are going to want to attach our flowers. And put your plant pots as close to the bottom as you can. Don't firmly press, just lay them there. You will want to fuss a little bit to get them in the right position so that when you center your flowers over the pot, that your flowers are still within the front of the card so it fits in your envelope. So you can see here, I don't have my plant pot far enough to the left. So since I didn't fully adhere that down, I can shimmy that over a little bit, and that is maybe even a little too far. So I'm just gonna play with that again. Okay, now I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm gonna firmly adhere those, and let's check over here. I'm gonna move that one a smidge as well. And I'm pretty happy with that. Now, this card doesn't actually say Happy Valentine's Day. I could, if I wanted, stamp that down here on the inside. I'm going to choose not to do that so that I can write a message, keeping in mind that when you write a message to the recipient, you're going to have space up here and down here for your message. And so I'm going to opt to leave it like this. If you did really want it to say Happy Valentine's, however, I might also consider a long, narrow sentiment label. I could put that here on top of the awning. Now, neither one of these stamp sets have a Happy Valentine's Day in it, but if you're looking for a Happy Valentine's and you happen to have gotten the Sweet Conversations suite in order to get this designer series paper, there's a perfect stamp there. So let's go ahead and make a Valentine's Day sentiment that we can add onto our awning. I'm going to go ahead and take the Blushing Bride. In this case, it matches this DSP. And I'm using just a scrap of cardstock that I would have gotten from making matting layers. When I cut paper down to make 4 by 5 1/4 inch matting layers for a card base, I end up with strips like this. I always save them. They're great for sentiments. Go ahead and stamp that. I don't love that one. We try it again. Great. And I can just give this a quick snip. And that gives me a nice Valentine message there. Maybe I'll make one for the other card as well. So in that case, I'm going to bring in my Flirty Flamingo. And I'm going to put these down with Stampin' Seal because I think that if I would use the dimensionals, it's just going to add too much dimension for mailing, keeping in mind that I already have dimensionals underneath the bottom of the awning. So let's go ahead and do that. It's amazing. Every time I play, I kind of think of something. There we go. Now it feels like a Valentine, right? So these are really adorable. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'd appreciate it if you'd leave me a comment. Let me know which version's your favorite. Do you like the first version in Flirty Flamingo using the Pattern Party DSP? Or do you like the second version in Blushing Bride using the Sweet Talk Designer Series paper? Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the notifications bell so that you're notified each time I upload a new video. If you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I would love to become your Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. You can shop my online store for any of these products: Sweet Conversations, Welcoming Window, Sweet Ice Cream, even the Scallop Contours dies, or the Brick and Mortar 3D embossing folder, the Ice Cream Builder Punch, or any of the ink. I'd be more than happy to help you get these products so that you can make these adorable Valentines. Oh, and don't forget the window sheets as well. Thank you so much for joining me. I've had a really great time making this card with you. I look forward to stamping with you again soon. Until the next time. Bye.